Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports. And right now, I'm all set up and I'm waiting for my next segment on War Room. But because I have a few minutes, and because you're subscribers, and because you click that little bell notification, you're now going to see these numbers literally before anyone else. And what are they? Our hot off the press latest Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump 2024 election matchup numbers. And there's some really important stuff in here. The headline is basically Trump is still winning, but the race has tightened. If you don't like hearing that, though, please do not rage quit this video because there's a chart in here you're really going to want to see that explains things in a way that I don't think any other pollster is going to tell you. And that's an important point. If you want to know what's happening in politics, if you want to know what's going on in the polls, if you want to know why the press is saying Kamala Harris is up right now on Donald Trump, but she isn't actually, you're really not going to hear this news anywhere else, except, maybe our friend Rich Barris. He puts a lot of great content out there. But my point is, if you want to hear all that, make sure you subscribe on YouTube or Rumble and follow us on Twitter at Rasmussen_poll. But basically, before we get started, we're going to look at the last time that we tested Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. And I will tell you, we're basically in election mode now, so we're polling every night. You're going to see a lot of responses here. I know it's been only like a week and a half since Joe Biden got dumped. So these numbers are from July 22 through July 24, and this is not long after she was unanimously coronated as the Democrat candidate without a single primary vote. If the 2024 election were between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, who would you vote for? And in this set, Donald Trump wins 50% to 43%, a 7-point margin, and a really important result because it's one of the few times in our polling this cycle that Donald Trump has gotten to 50%. In fact, I think in any cycle, this is really important. Now, he was winning men a lot, 12 points, up slightly among women, up quite a bit among 18 to 39-year-olds, 14 points, basically tied with 65 and older, losing the black vote, 60 points to 34 points. And here he had a slight Republican crossover advantage, taking 86% of the Republican vote, Kamala Harris taking 83% of the Democrat vote. These have been sort of swinging around, but it's a way different scenario than, 2 or so months ago when Joe Biden was down like 15 points in the crossover. Here, Donald Trump was beating Kamala Harris by 20 points among independents. Burn that into your mind. We're going to talk about that later. Now, in the multi-way matchup, which one of these to pick is, kind of personal choice. The real result is probably somewhere in the middle. So it's possible people who don't know about Kennedy pick one of these two when they, clearly down here might hold out and select it. And the sum total of these results here is 10 points, where up here, some other candidate not sure is only 7. So there are a few people who do, change the way they answer the question. Here, Donald Trump is, however, still up 7 points. An important result, does way better among independents here, 24 points. This might sort of just be luck of the draw with this poll, but whatever. Let's look at the new numbers. And here we have a massive poll of almost 2,200 U.S. likely voters. That's an important point. We poll likely voters. Almost everybody else is polling registered voters right now, which means when they report the results, most headline numbers have not been put through a screen that asks people, how likely are you to actually vote? So I think our numbers are better. This was July 24th through 31st. So 6 nights of data up until and including yesterday. And there's the 24th, which one night gets carried over from one poll to the other. So here is the results. And Donald Trump is still beating Kamala Harris by 5 points, 49 to 44. And like I said, Donald Trump is still winning, but the race has tightened. What I would probably call this is Donald Trump survived the Kamala Harris info op, which includes, as you all know, coordinated and fawning media coverage, an Obama endorsement. A lot of people still respect Barack Obama. Vicious press attacks on Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, another seemingly coordinated effort to paint them both as weird, and the press and big tech taking like a magic eraser to this woman's record. But here we are, 49 to 44. Going through the demographics, Donald Trump's still up 9 among men. I think any variation between the last polls, probably noise. Basically tied among women, 47 to 46. Basically tied among 18 to 39-year-olds. That's, about the average of where he's been. Winning big among middle-aged voters. Trump has basically been doing that the entire time. Winning slightly among older voters. Winning by a pretty comfortable 11-point margin among white voters. Taking home 33% of the black vote. Beating Kamala Harris among Hispanics by an astoundingly high percentage. But keep in mind, this is a smaller subsample with a larger margin of error. But here we go. Donald Trump is being beat 81 to 15 among Democrats. So that's 66%. But he's up 75 points among Republicans, 85 to 10. So there's a 9-point crossover advantage. And Donald Trump is now beating Kamala Harris by only 10 points among independents. That's probably closer to the truth than that, 20-point number. And I'll get into that as well later. But here's the multi-way matchup. And now Donald Trump's lead is down to only 1 point. And, if you expanded these numbers out, it's really like about 1.5 points. It changes the internals quite a bit, which is kind of crazy. We usually don't see that. 18 to 39-year-olds are now much more likely to go to Kamala Harris. All of a sudden, they remembered that there are third-party independent candidates in the race. It really changed the middle-aged voter results too. And I don't know. I think a lot of this is noise. Again, we'll get into why. Donald Trump is now taking home only 28% of the black vote. A lot of black voters do like RFK. And Hispanics are going for Trump now by only 6 points. Crossover advantage is much smaller than it was before, and independents are now giving Trump only a 6-point advantage. Going out to the right, I thought this was interesting too. Kamala Harris is getting 93% of the Joe Biden strong approve vote, but 6% of them are going for Trump. A fewer number, 87% of Joe Biden's strong disapprovers are going for Trump, but only 4% of them versus 6% are going for the opposition candidate. A pretty good number of those people, 5% of Joe Biden's strong disapprovers are going for Kennedy. But let's get into the charts I was talking about. The very first one, this is Trump, now titled Trump versus Democrat 2024, because we had a switcheroo. Maybe we'll have another. But this is all of the polling we've done since the fall of 2021. 3 years, Trump versus a Democrat, with the margin of error laid on top of this. Now, there were some massive swings, and a lot of it was because it was off cycle. But you can see here on the right side of the chart, things are really starting to tighten up and swing a lot less. But what's crazy is all of this stuff that's happened with the horrible debate, the assassination attempt, the Kamala switcheroo, the Obama endorsement, all that stuff has really happened only in about the last 4 data points here. And what's crazy is it doesn't seem to have changed the race much. Really what was happening is kind of all spring, the Democrats were sort of getting their stuff in one sock, tightening up and getting up there into the low to mid 40s. Looks like that trend has kind of continued, but here we are with Donald Trump doing about 49 points, comfortably close to 50 and winning outside of the margin of error. You see how these 2 red and blue dotted lines here do not cross. And that's pretty much been true for the entire spring. Chart 2 to me is the important one. So these are the overnight individual responses of all of our post-switcheroo Trump-Harris numbers. Each of these nights here, you can see over on the right, is about 360, 370 results. Now, any one of these nights is going to have a pretty big margin of error treated as its own individual poll. But nonetheless, we're still seeing a very important trend here. The first Kamala Harris, Donald Trump results we put out that showed Trump leading 7 was composed of the first 3 rows of data here. And what was really happening is a lot of people were confused. There was chaos. Narratives hadn't formed yet. And in that first night, Donald Trump was beating Kamala Harris by an astounding 16 points. But you could actually see public opinion solidify. The following night showed Donald Trump winning by only 6 And then on the 24th, Donald Trump was actually down 3 points. It's important to point out these are the multi-way matchups, which have been tighter than the two-way matchups. And so that result came out as Trump +7. These most recent results start with the 24th, again, with Donald Trump down 3 points on Kamala Harris, and continue to July 31st, where now Trump is back up to 5 points. Look at the chart on the right, and you can see the Kamala Harris honeymoon Barack Obama bounce in real time added a whole ton of support, and now that support is fading. Some of that support came from Donald Trump, but it is reverting to what is likely the mean. Now, the big question is, what will that mean be? I don't know. It's hard to say. There's probably going to be another convention bounce, but my guess is probably somewhere in the Trump +4 to Trump +5 range, because that's what we were seeing in the last 2 nights of data. The honeymoon's over. Kind of faded pretty quick. And for people who have been following us, we have another important chart that we like to drag out all of the time. And this one is all of our polling, but with 5-period moving averages. So it smooths everything out, and you can see what's happening in the race. And the Democrats really are getting a bounce there. Part of this was Joe Biden, and part of this is now Kamala Harris. But it hasn't, Donald Trump's going up too. So the real loser here is Kennedy, who has dropped more than half of his support and has really only been polling in about the 5-point range. We do have questions in the field about whether or not Kennedy should drop out. And if he does, who should he endorse? Now, we'll take one quick look at the Real Clear Politics average. This is the polling aggregate that we do trust and the one that you should look at, because the other one dropped us for malicious reasons. I won't mention them here. Here's our latest matchup, Trump +7. Our new one is not out here. But you can see in all of this polling, Kamala Harris is only up in 2 polls. One of them is the Reuters Ipsos one that we responded to, and we thought there were some pretty interesting internals, a really big swing in how independents voted that kind of really explained all of Kamala Harris's pickup in their poll. And, maybe they are seeing the same thing we are, because I will say that there is a 3-day period in our numbers where if we had processed the data and release a smaller subset of it, it would have shown Kamala Harris up, but it's not the entire picture. So this is 2 polls that they've put up showing Kamala Harris up. And Morning Consult, which I think Rich Barris has done a really great job breaking down why there's a ton of reasons not to trust the data coming out here. And a lot of it depended on some, let's just say, anomalous results in swing states. The only other pollster that has Harris up is the Daily Kos, and I don't think anybody should look at that. So really, look at everything else. We've been polling a lot like Harvard Harris in this cycle, and they have Trump up 4. That's about where he is in our polling right now. So Trump is leading right now. Kamala Harris, I think, 4 to 5 points outside the margin of error. If you've been following us, you've probably seen this too. This is our swing state polling from our mega swing state poll that was conducted July 5th to July 12th. And I will say that Joe Biden leaving and Kamala Harris being swapped in really does change the dynamic somewhat. The way that women vote, probably minority voters, the youth will all vote differently. But this was a poll that Trump was only up +3 in. And again, he's probably up about 4 or 5 right now. And even then, Donald Trump, these are the two-way numbers at the top and the multi-way numbers right here, the second set. Donald Trump in the multi-way was winning in every single battleground state by between 1 and 9 points. Arizona +9, Pennsylvania +4, Georgia +5, Wisconsin +3, Nevada +8, and even Michigan by +1, within the margin of error. So they did it, folks. They did their switcheroo. There was a response in the polling. Was it a big response? I don't know. It doesn't look like it. I think these numbers might even fade more as people start using the internet to find out more about Kamala Harris's previous very left-leaning stances. I think the internet might factor in here in a way that it hasn't in recent cycles. Trust in the media is increasingly being destroyed. Remember, 60% of U.S. likely voters think the media is actually the enemy of the people. And guess what? We also have Twitter. in a way that we haven't in the 2016 and 2020 elections. Oh, and by the way, if you don't use Twitter, you should be. That is the right place to be getting your news right now. Find independent sources you trust and build your own following. And while you're at it, follow us there too as well at Rasmussen_poll. I'm posting also at Mark_R_Mitchell. I'm new there, so check me out. And you can also go to RasmussenReports.com and sign up for a free daily update of all our polls so you see them every day. Hope you learned something, and thanks for watching.